Once again, it's Thursday and we're flying through space on the USS Postshow. It is I, your number one, and this is Commander's Log, the unofficial Star Trek Discovery Post show. My name is Flobo Boyce, but of course, as always, I am not alone. I am being joined by the terror of two universes, Mr. Augustus Iaponius Centaurus, Emperor, and I, Captain John Webber. How you doing, sir?
Oh, man, you don't have to give me anything for Christmas. You just gave it to me. Commander,
you doing good?
Commander Boyce. Oh, it's been a hell of a week, Bren. It's been a hell of a week. I've been working on the studio here, as you could tell.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, well,
I'm
thank
keep
you.
These lights. I understand, like the lights have totally changed the vibe. I can keep the
Right.
lights down up top. It makes me look great.
There's a certain mysteriousness that it brings to you, and you do other shows, and your lighting is different in other shows. So I'm kind of digging.
I try
this
to do
one,
something
man.
different. Like I do one show without headphones. I do one show with a hat on. Like I make it work, man. I make it work. But we are
make it
covering
nice.
the Terra Firma episode of Star Trek Discovery, Terra Firma Part 1. But we are not alone. Our special guest is the author of the novel chosen in the serial Arrondissement. He, where he's from, he is the prime, and we're just a mere universe. Give it up for author Leo Jenicek. How's it going, sir?
Hello.
Welcome aboard, Leo.
Welcome aboard.
Permission to come aboard.
Oh, permission granted. Leo and I literally know each other for almost 30 years now. Can you literally do something for almost something? About 92, 93, maybe?
Yeah, it was. I saw the first time I met you was at Improv Jam when it used to be down in the West Village. And he used to do with now the late Tom Soder. Which is for anybody who is in the New York improv scene knew Tom. Tom recently, we lost Tom, which is heartbreaking. Which I don't mean to start this whole episode on a sour note or down note, but that's how John and I met. And I remember going out with you and a bunch of the people from the show afterwards, and we started talking about Marvel Comics, and you were so enthused to talk about it, and because I was so into it, because he's so like. I saw the show. It was before I even started doing improv, and I was like, "This guy is so funny." And he's so, but you were so genuinely warm and friendly, and that's what I always remember when I think about you. The first, remembering the first time we met, and you've continued on that streak thereafter. So
well, thank
Do I
you,
get
sir.
offended? Like, oh, he's warm for other people, but he's ice cold.
Well,
what's funny is I always tried to be like a good person and a nice person in the comedy scene, and it's fairly unusual. And then when I was doing stand up, that's where I met Flobo, and Flobo is that he just stands out as like a nice, inclusive, shares, which makes him almost completely not belong to the world of stand-up comedy. He's a great comic.
Wait, what? Any more of a
He's a great comic, but he ain't stand-up comedy people. He's Flobo, damn it. He's his own kind of person.
Thank you so much for those of us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch. Just if you're on Twitch right now, do me a favor and make sure you follow the channel, grow the community. Jake Giles, who was a guest last week, he said he's back in engineering, so we all good. And Rajasaurus says, "What was nice, but he isn't funny." Also true. Let's move on to part 1. Hey man, if you're on stage, you gotta take the punches. You're a prize fighter. Terra Firma Part 1, a Terran episode out of nowhere. Let me start with you, Leo, because you are our guest. Overall thoughts about the show? I know this is a departure. The Emerald Chains hanging out till next week, in the background. But how you feel about this one? I think we lost him.
Oh no!
I think we lost him.
Leo froze
In the
up.
meantime, as we get Leo back, what do you think about the episode, John?
This was an episode that we have been anticipating because Filippo Giorgio, who is the Emperor from the Mirror Universe, as we call it, or the Terran Universe. Welcome back, Leo.
Yes. Sorry, I was
Poor guy.
Clearly, some sort of parallel universe shenanigans going on. But please continue.
What did you think, Leo, about us going right into Giorgio's story in this storyline I mean, they had been building up to it, but did you think we were going to go headlong in? Because as Flobo referred to,
I had no idea, and I was delayed because I'm a sucker for a mirror universe story.
yes,
You know, like ever since TOS, that one episode which has made such an impression, and they've done it. And they never did it in Next Gen, but they did a bunch in Deep Space Nine, and of course on Enterprise, and now here in the Discovery verse, for lack of a better term. It was really interesting. Because one, I didn't expect it, and it's interesting seeing her change. Because when she says goodbye to Saru until he hugs her, which is something should have been like a knifing offense, and she's sort of like awkwardly pats her on the back in a way that indicates that she has changed despite her sort of very curmudgeonly demeanor. And I was talking with Flobo before, the gentleman sitting by the door on this planet. And it was like, this was something that didn't occur to me. I read it in a review. It was like, is that Q or AQ? And I'm like, maybe it is. Because, I was also wondering, like, he's going to open the door, she's going to walk out, and she's just going to be on the other side of the door. Which would be like,
surprise!
Pretty anticlimactic. But they thrust her in. And it was interesting watching her trying to navigate her old life, having changed, whether she wanted to admit it or not.
Right.
After living with we'll call it the Prime Universe, our universe. Despite their assertion that their universe won, and so on and so forth. It was. There was so many details, and I want to see if I can pronounce the character's name right. Lieutenant Owo-Shikun, who was the ops officer.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's calls her Owa now, but
because she's the head of the bodyguard for the Empress, and she's like the security, and she has a scar on her cheek, much like Sulu did in the original Mirror. And I was like, that was like a nice little. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of scars in the Mirror universe, so it's probably not that unusual.
Oh, that's so deep, bro.
It was a real, it was a nice tip of the hat to, the original show. Like I said, it's just, I'm always, every time we go to the Mirror universe, I'm always like, I want to see more of it. I want to see what beyond just what's going on the ship. It's like, what is the world like? I mean, obviously we get a larger sense of it now. We spent more time in the Mirror universe, I think, on Discovery than any other series.
So and there's a detail to that too, which is her continuity is parallel in time to the original Discovery continuity. So she's in the past, as opposed to us Deep Space Nine fans who visited the Mirror Universe 2 or 3 times and saw what it was like in the future. Ahead of that. So we've jumped around in time just as observers in watching the Terran Empire.
Sure.
And I think, help me out, Leo, or Flobo, in the original series in TOS, we do hear about an emperor, but we never meet the emperor.
That's correct.
So I was thinking, as I recall, there was an emperor, or there was an emperor, but we never saw him.
Right.
Yeah, because it was all, they had the TOS budget, which was, shoestring. But, there's the one where Kirk is there with his captain's woman, and she's like, you're trying to become an admiral, and he sort of like shrugs because he doesn't really have an answer. He's just trying to sort of fake it till he makes it so they can get out. And she's like, to become the emperor himself, and he's like, kind of like, well, if it happens, it happens.
And then in Enterprise, which precedes everything, there's a Mirror Universe episode, which I always tell people is one of the best episodes of the series. One of my favorites.
It is. It was great. And then Hoshi becomes the Empress because she has like the future, Intrepid, which while it's not as impressive as anything on Next Gen, is so much more impressive than, the Enterprise era Enterprise. And she's like, I'm the Empress now. And everybody's like, I guess so.
Right. Which
So-
I just love. I just love.
We unpacked a whole lot of stuff, right? That was pretty awesome. But this is the deal,
Oh,
like
yeah.
JoJo is full of molecules, and they have stretched both time and dimension, and they're having a rough
Yes.
time. So JoJo and Michael Burnham go to Hoth. No, I'm just kidding. They go to Denver, the frozen planet, to go inside. And yeah, I like you thought Carl was a Q or Q clone. Now, again, I am somebody who's new to Star Trek. I always say this. I am okay with honestly with my fandom. I got into Star Trek in 2018. Discovery is my Star Trek, but even I know the weight of a Q or a Mud
Yeah.
showing up right here. But you know what? It was kind of interesting because one of the things about like the lore of Star Trek I've noticed, going back and watching Enterprise, going back and watching TNG, is like the way they turned cost cutting into an art, right? This could have been a fire pit. This could have been a centaur, but it was a dude reading the paper, which is awesome. It was great.
It was sort of like it was sort of this Lou, like Ed Asner, sort of like who you hire when you can't afford Ed Asner, and no, just because I'm sure he's a fine actor, but he had that kind of like slightly Lou Grant, with twinkle in his eye.
Was that Paul Guilfoyle, John? If you can.
Oh God, let me head over to Memory Alpha because I know him.
He's probably
I know
got
him from CSI.
Yeah,
right?
Paul Guilfoyle.
As Brass.
Yeah, yep, that's Paul Guilfoyle. I was like, yeah, Ed Asner, which I met this year, which I didn't.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I met him. It was so Hollywood. So anyway, I was in the studio and I was on the way out. He was walking in, but really, I was really cold and I went inside a room to warm up, and then he walked in doing an interview. So,
it was funny. I worked on a show with Ed Asner many years ago, and while we were putting the episode together, it was a show called The Closer. So, somebody catch all these names I'm dropping. It was a show called The Closer, starring Tom Selleck, and at one point, the network canceled the show.
Yeah.
And so the question was, were they going to be finishing this episode? Or were we all getting sent home? So we were all put in a room, and there were so many guest stars on this particular episode too, because there was a funeral. So all these people who show up and they all speak, and so all these great young character actors are sitting around. And Ed Asner was a regular on that show, and he came in and he just hung out with us and asked us questions because he loves actors. He's just interested in other people.
Great.
And what could have been a total bummer was such a nice time because Ed Asner was so kind and so interested in his rank and file, fellow actors. Tom Selleck was nice, but he said hi. Ed Asner was like, "So where are you from? What have you done?"
Tom Selleck with that Magnum energy. Before we go into the Terran fantasy or simulation, I want your opinion about this quickly before that. The decision to go. Saru had originally decided against it. He thought the Emerald Chain was more important, but he was overstepped by Admiral Vance, which I thought was a really interesting play on Saru still being new and the responsibilities of being a captain. Let me ask you, Leo, did it work for you? Did it seem out of character? What was going through your mind?
It was interesting because, at first Vance is like, because these guys show up from like 1,000 years in the past, and they're like, hey, we want to help out, but we don't know any of your rules, and we really don't know what's going on. And it's kind of like asking a puppy to pull a sled. It's like, it's very enthusiastic, but you probably might not go that far. And I think he's beginning to see their value, and he also I think it's leaning into the Federation idea that people are important, and individuals, like the choices you make reflect who you are. Which is, to me, a very Federation idea. It's not just about a bottom line. It's about like, well, listen, if we say no, she will die, because Colbert's like, listen, she is, like, if we do nothing, she's got no chance of surviving at all. And he decides, and it's also for whatever the crew of the Discovery, he may not know exactly how the crew of the Discovery feels about George, because I'm sure there's some people there be like, listen, if she goes, she goes, because she's really like a lot of work. She's definitely high maintenance. So, but obviously it's important to Yeah, exactly. It was important to Michael, and I think that he realized that it was important. It was important to Culber, and he felt like, well, one ship is not going to make a difference in these exercises. So you should go do it. It feels like we're moving towards more like what we think of the Federation as, because they right now, in the beginning they felt like well, we're technically the Federation, but with a lot less ships and resources, and we're kind of like we're a little on edge.
I love that line he says where he says, we don't do 5-year missions anymore. Like, we're not like the happy ambassadors anymore. He
if you want
really
that,
lit
Strange
that
New
up.
Worlds coming next fall at CBS All Access. No, I'm kidding. It was very distinct to say we're a different breed now.
Yeah. And Giorgio has been, I wonder if you guys, because you work in comedy too, you make a lot of comedy too. I just felt like we were kind of getting to the point where she was just becoming a joke. She's becoming the tiger mom from hell.
That's a very interesting point.
Last episode, she's threatening to kill people, and she's just reacting. I mean, okay, it's a character thing. She's reacting to her terrible situation through her hostility and her high maintenance, high dudgeon.
Yeah.
I love the line of like, "I killed my mother," and Burnham's like, "You did not."
Right. I think you raised a good point, John. Okay, yeah. What you're seeing in this episode, she couldn't even hold her glass of wine or holy mead, and that's kind of working on you. But like, even that first episode when she basically stowed away in that away mission with Tilly and Saru, there really was this base of, look, I've seen worse. I can deal with this. I think this is the first time that we see Giorgio, even someone who crossed dimensions or universes, now being in uncharted waters. And I think I was willing to buy that in this one, of her being a little more like, I'm talking, but I'm a little shaky and I'm phasing, bro.
Oh, yeah, she's got it. I mean, she's freaking out.
Obviously, because she's used to being in control. Like before, she was just sort of like laying back and being cool and being snarky and then doing something awesome and be like, throw some, just look over her shoulders like that's how it's done. And now she's like, I can't pick up a glass of wine. Not only that, she's in front of all these people. So when Tilly goes over and be like, hey, do you need some help? And she's like, throw soup at her, because she's like, I'm not going to be pitied by this, this jumped up ensign. I think that it's clearly that's her reacting to her panic, because as much as she's like, well, if I die, I die. I want to die in combat. And she's like, she's losing. It's all about losing control. Like, even when she was before, she was like, she was out of her, she was in a different dimension, a different universe, but she was like, I still have skills, I still have all this to bring to the table. Now she feels like, what am I bringing to it? I'm going to be this invalid, or I'm going to starve to death because I can't touch things.
Well, you make a good point there, because there is like the base Terran philosophy of going in combat. But I remember, and then my reference to this is back when DC launched the New 52 and they rebooted Hal Jordan again, him having that battle against Darkseid, and Batman's like, bro, if you go out there, you will die. And he's like, if I'll die, I will die, because there's no other alternative. And the joke I used to say on stage was, hey man, I owe so much in student loans that if I fake my death, the only person who's going to find me is Sally Mae, right? I'm going to go for it, man. Why not? Why not, bro?
That's hilarious. This also was a little bit of an adjustment for me, because honestly, when I watched the previous 2 seasons, I just watched them. I didn't really store them away. When I started doing season 3 with Flobo, it was a whole new ball game. I'm paying more attention. I'm taking notes now and again. And so now we know this about the Terrans. They are basically the Klingons now.
Oh, yeah.
Die in battle. Bloodier the better. Battle brings glory. They're what we have for that battle race. And I suppose if you were going to go through the galaxy right now and find other cultures, you would find some battle-related cultures.
Yeah.
Sure.
You can argue,
and they also still love Cirque du Soleil. Well,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Terror Circus LA is dope.
Like,
I can't lie, man. It's probably a
pretty
cheaper
good.
ticket than Vegas.
I love that Stamets in the Terran universe
yeah.
is an actor. Basically, he's doing oratory, telling the story. You know?
He was just making a meal out of like doing this narration for this like erotic, curtain ballet or
Inverse.
whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it was.
Speaking in verse,
he was
I love
really,
that.
and it was perfect because he's a Broadway actor, so he's like
Yes.
he's projecting to the back row and really just enjoy. He's just enjoying it so much.
He really was. It's so funny that the guy from Rent in the Terran universe is still a talented guy.
Yeah.
So here's my thing. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say about the parallels of things. Now, I know Klingons tangentially, right? And I also know in Deep Space Nine, there was always like a debate of like who were the Ferengis and what they represent.
Yeah.
It's funny you said, John, that you saw the Klingons and Terrans. I saw our society. I saw Americans. I saw this constant drive to be theatrical, to show out on social media, to grind and hustle and do the business and have 20 jobs to the point where you're absolutely worked to a nub. So that was pretty interesting. Maybe we are Klingons. Maybe we're just all Klingons. That's what I'm saying. So.
Well, there had always been that argument that the Klingons in the original series were supposed to be Russians or, World War II Germans or something. There was always that question of like, who is this race of warriors?
Yeah.
Flobo always makes a good point. Must agree.
It was original series. It was definitely Cold War. If not Russians exactly, but sort of any Eastern Bloc thing, and the Romulans kind of like the Chinese.
Right,
which is also doesn't really, doesn't age well as a metaphor.
Right.
But the Klingons, as of next generation, suddenly became Vikings. They're all like honor bound and sort of like Viking samurai, sort of hybrid.
Right.
A Bushido kind of honor based warrior culture. Yeah.
Plus the fact they seem to have ceremonies for everything. I'm like, how do you get anything done? Like, are there ceremonies for when you clean the house? Is there like you have to shout out to the demons of dirt, saying that you will vanquish them? Is everything treated like a battle?
He's ascending again. He did it last year. I'm so over this.
God, I can't see because of all the candles.
So let's go into more of the Terra universe. My quick aside is that I really love seeing Evil Reese. That was my highlight of the episode. But her going in, Giorgio deciding to go into the door with that 5% chance of survival. We open up. We're kind of go back in time where it's a hallucination. We don't know what that is. But one question I have is, was it the right decision for her to go through that door? And two, is it right for JoJo to try to change what happened in the past, not knowing if she's in the past?
That's a good question.
Oof. It's weird because it's like, the whole thing could just be a test. To see
it's a very
like if that is indeed Q or someone Q like. So these omnipotent beings that seem to populate the far future of Star Trek. He's testing her because she's definitely not the same person she was when she left, because she spares Michael more out of love, even though she is going to send her to the agonizer booth, which, while I oppose on a fundamental ethical level, as a fan, I was very excited to hear agonizer again, because that's like a nice drop from the original show.
No judgments here, bro.
So,
yeah, I felt exactly the same way. Like, oh, that's terrible, but hey, they're bringing back some of the old canon. Hooray!
You guys are awful. Agonizer, yes.
So, she's obviously, she kept trying to, and I kept hoping we would see Lorca, and I don't know if he'll show up next week. They might not be able to have gotten him. But Lorca, weirdly, is one of my favorite characters from this new universe, even though he
Yes.
ended up being a terrible. There was something so kind of like charming and somewhat compelling about him, despite the fact that he was an absolute bastard.
Yeah.
And
Jason
I would
Isaacs.
love to
am I
see if
getting
they,
that
Jason Isaacs, yeah. He was, there was something about him that I just enjoyed watching, even as we learned it, like, oh, he's just completely evil. But yeah, it's,
One of the things I love
think
about
but
Discovery is that they have their captains are these really high up there characters. You know, one of the reasons why this show is called Commander's Log is because we're seeing things from the perspective of the first officer, the commander. Just not the highest level in command. And I did love about him that you didn't really know what he was thinking all the time. You didn't really know what his intentions were, and then when you find out it was evil all along, it's like, oh, now it makes sense.
Yeah. Whoops. By the way, he's evil. It's Scar. We should have known.
The casting made sense too, because Jason Isaacs does have that malevolent level of sort of, steady evil.
Yeah,
you got to be pretty evil to raise.
Accent.
Yeah, I agree.
I
with
will
that
say
too.
that like British and Australian actors do a better American accent than we can, except for Robert Downey Jr. He's the only outlier that could do a British accent semi decent.
Yeah,
so.
they're very.
Props to that.
Well, that's sometimes what we think is a good British accent. When people, the Brits are like, no. Everybody, like all your American friends are like, oh, your British accent's really good, and the your Brits are like, that's a nice try.
Yeah, come off it, mate. That was awful.
I've always wanted to try to. Early in my acting career, I was auditioning for radio commercials for Foster's Ale, and it was me and actual Australian people all around me, and they hated me. Says I was doing this. Oh wow, crikey, that's a good beer. And they were like, no.
Yeah, you're totally doing the stage Australian. you're like wearing the Crocodile Dundee hat while you're doing it too, like totally being a stereotype.
That's not a knife. This is a knife. I'm like, yeah, it's not bad.
Oh man, they probably hated you.
They hated me.
So let's talk about this simulation or hallucination or throwback. We don't know what it is quite yet. A lot of things happen here, and there's 2 points I want your opinions on, and that is Georgiou's decision to take in Saru as a slave to get more insight of Burnham's insurrection, and after it's all figured out, her decision to spare Burnham's life. Was that good ideas or nah, bruh?
Well,
do we know?
I would say.
Go ahead, Leo.
Well, I mean, actually, using Saru was a good idea. Like, actually, for both, like, perhaps this guy, because this whole thing feels like a redemptive story for Giorgio, the Empress, and it's like it was good for partially because we all like Saru and we don't want to see Mirror Saru served as dinner. But it's also smart for an empress to be like, because it's true, like slaves know, because people, especially if you've got a society where you've got slaves, people are talking in front of slaves like they're furniture, much the way I think people these days will talk in front of, if you're the sort of person who has servants, a situation I've never actually encountered personally, that people talk about in front of the servants like they're furniture. And they don't, because they don't think of them as people. So it's smart for both. Like if she's going to be evil, it's a good idea. Like to get information on what's going on. But also for her redemptive arc, it's good because she spared Saru, and she's like, it's one less bit of shitty, terrible thing happening in the mirror universe. So it's a little bit. It's sparing Michael. I think she's trying to save her Michael because her Michael died, and she sees this as a chance to bring her back. And I think she's being honest, which is like, I'll bring her back into the flock. And everybody's like, you should probably kill her. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to be empress, but it's going to be a sign of weakness. So it's much like Kirk trying to trying to find a way to spare the Hulkins, she's trying to find a way to spare Michael. Although Michael is like seems to be like dead set on just killing her and taking her stuff.
Execute me, mother.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, John, same question, man. I mean, there is a very direct line for Kelpians in this universe, but Georgiou takes him in, and makes her like the most like beneficial slave, and she spares Burnham's life after begging to die in front of a crowd that says she's weak. Georgiou says, "No, it's too easy." Is that the right decision?
We don't know what she kept flashing back to when this was first affecting her. Remember, there was somebody and they were bloody, and she was yelling, San? Was she yelling San? And then she's trying to compress this wound, and then she's got blood on her hand, and all these things that are flying through her head while she's first getting these spells. And we don't know what it all meant. We don't know even if Georgiou knows what any of this meant. Is she flashing back to what happens during this period? It's bizarre right now. So she's got to go in as carefully as she can. So I think that's what she's thinking. Let's try to preserve all the assets that I see around me. Let's think like an empress here. Preserve all the things that work for me. Maintain the lie, which is, yes, I'm in charge and I'm evil and I'm the queen of all evil. That's not true anymore. She's not as evil as she wants to be.
But she wore a dope crown, though. I don't know. It's pretty evil looking. I don't know.
Oh yeah, she's rocking like a real space emperor. It's like that.
Yeah, I gotta wonder if we're gonna see. There are going to be some Emmys for costuming this year because, normally I'm not talking about this stuff, but holy cow, that looked good.
Speaking of Emmys,
it was a little Flash Gordon.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It
Yeah,
was.
the costuming was next level, but I'm like, if Sonequa Martin Green does not get nominated based on future Michael being lost, high Michael, Terran Michael, like this new relaxed Michael, it's like Black Mirror level of work here. Look, I get it. A lot of Star Trek fans in those Facebook groups go, I don't really like Michael Burnham, but dude, Sonequa Martin Green got the chops. She needs all the Emmys. She needs all the Emmys, fam. Why not?
Yeah, that moment where she's like, "What?" That's iconic. Go ahead, Leo.
I do love seeing her do different, like, because she was like the first season she was like super like I'm like repressed and sort of like I'm just waiting to get sent back to jail. Like she never seemed like I'm not going to try to have friends or nice things or enjoy anything because it's all going to be taken away. And then she's redeemed by the end. But in the second season, she was like so driven, and it wasn't the same note as varied. In this season, we've got to see her, like you said, she was hot, which was a blast to watch her, and you get to see her she's becoming more well-rounded, and we get to see these different aspects to her character, which is all big part of it is in the writing, obviously, but she's able to do it. It's always interesting when you watch people work together. If you look at, when Whoopi Goldberg first showed up on Next Gen, and she has a scene with Wesley, and no offense to as Guinan, why am I forgetting Wesley's
Will Wheaton,
the actor who plays Wesley's name? Will Wheaton, yes. And he's like, gosh, Guinan, I've got all these problems. Now that he wasn't bad, but then you've got Oscar winner Whoopi Goldberg, who was just like smooth as silk and just as effortless. She's like anything. She's always effortless. You always feel like believe everything she says. She's never you never feel like, oh, she's acting. She just is very much in the moment, in the best possible way.
That's really true.
I'm glad to see her get the opportunity. So Sonequa Martin Green to get the opportunity to show different aspects of her character, to be like, hey, I'm in love with somebody, and it's not like some stressful, like, are you really a Klingon spy, and
whoops,
or this, like she should be like, I'm just gonna like lie back in bed with the guy I'm with, and just to be like, yeah, that was nice. I like that. Like she seemed relaxed, like she could enjoy, you know. And she's making mistakes. She'll make a mistake, and she owes it. She's like, yeah, she knows she made a mistake, but they're all. I feel like we're getting to see, because of what's written for her, like such a great range for her as an actress, and also for the character.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I if she gets nominated for something, I would be like, yes, absolutely. We'll see. I mean, TV's very weird this year. Maybe she's got a shot.
Yeah. But before
There's
I go on to my next,
there's TV and everything is. Sorry, yeah, go on.
no,
I was gonna wax.
Sorry.
No, I'm just like TV and movies, or like, what are the Oscars gonna look like? Because so little actually came out, you know.
Yeah.
So they were like, what is? They're not gonna. They may not have 11 Best Picture nominees like they've had in the last few years.
I got a feeling that either will call they either will call that number for this year only, or you're going to see a lot of things dump between now and the end of the season to say, hey, look, it's an open field. Like if I have a mini major and I have no chance of winning under normal circumstances, best believe the Flobito story is going to be pushed out in every theater or streaming service. Why not, man? Here's my chance. Go for it.
Strike while the iron's hot.
Opening in theaters and streaming the same day.
Yeah, exactly, like Wonder Woman. But before we go on to our next topic, I just want to say that Commander's Log, the official unofficial Star Trek Discovery Post show, is brought to you by Geek Renaissance. Look, it's the holiday season. Do yourself a favor, hit up Geek Renaissance and get yourself some of the cool stuff, the geek stuff that you can buy for friends. We're talking earrings, chess pieces, necklaces, jewelry. Geek Renaissance, where you have to go. Hit them up on Instagram. You can buy stuff directly in the app. Tell them Flobo sent you. When they say, who the hell is that? Say he's the host of Commander's Log, the unofficial Star Trek Discovery Post show, man. So meanwhile, on the ship, though, we do get the distress signal decoded. And it turns out the distress signal is made by a fellow Kelpian. This is spicy because Saru is feeling all kinds of things. I don't know about you guys, but seeing Mirror Saru being treated like furniture and seeing this Saru seeing a bit of his culture, I'm getting some Minority vibes. It's just me. Maybe just me. It's just me. You know, seeing the ancestors in one universe and being treated as less than the other universe is pretty cool. This one's about that. The fact that Adira and Stamets work together to find this distress signal, and the distress signal is being sold by a Kelpian, which is Dr. Issa of the KSF Kike.
Issa?
Oh, it was great.
That's interesting.
Issa. I love as a Kelpian because, you know, we haven't seen any more Kelpians since they've gotten to the 31st century?
That's a good question.
Nerds don't hate me, so it's, you know, in the far distant future, we have yet to see another Kelpian, and even like, you know, the Admiral Vance is like, yeah, we don't get a lot of Kelpians around in here. It's like, okay, but they don't say they're all dead or your planet is gone. It's just deliberately vague. And it was cool to see another Kelpian. And I also like the dynamic, just on a side note, of Stamets and Culber being sort of surrogate dads for our erstwhile, you know, joined non-Bajoran. It is their kind of like, they're like her dads, and they're like, oh, you know, come over, put your jacket over. It's like in the previous episode, it's very sweet. And I think for Stamets, he's kind of gotten to the point where he's like not angry all the time because he doesn't feel like he's being, like his science is being abused, and we get to see him be like, he's in a good relationship with somebody he loves that he thought he was going to love, and he's like, he's enjoying life, just however chaotic he is. And I mean, that's a side note, but I like seeing that aspect of it. But
it's really one of the strongest parts of this season.
This was like, it is. It's I'm enjoying that, and I'm curious to see what's going on with other Kelpians. I'm like, you know, are people still alive in the middle of that crazy nebula, and what happened? What started the burn? Which is the and I'm really glad, unless they tied back to Michael Burnham, like I would like they don't call it the Burn because her name is Burnham. Like somehow,
I hope not.
because that would have been a little disappointing.
I'd be so mad.
Yeah.
Like, really?
I
Yeah.
really hope not too. But I like the fact the show has becoming a little more ensemble-y. I mean, they've got a shorter season than a regular syndicated season. Well, we've got to see like some of the other crew get like moments, like God, what can I? Our helmsman. You know, she gets to pilot, and she gets to he had like a little mini breakdown, and
Detmer.
then she got to pilot book Detmer. Yes.
Oh yeah, right.
She gets to pilot book ship, and she gets to have a cool moment. And I want to see all these characters have cool moments. I want to see get to know more about this bridge crew. I would love to see if they did an episode which is just about their daily lives and what it's like to be sort of a junior officer on the ship, sort of not quite lower decks, but sort of like lower decks.
You know,
Total Shift. It's a comedy for like 40 minutes.
You know, it was so exciting because I always watch the summation show that the Ready Room that Will Wheaton is now hosting, and they had was it 6? They had 6 people from the crew, maybe it was 5, on the screen, and they were interviewing everybody, mostly about how much fun is it to do the mirror universe version of your character. And the guy who plays Reese shines like a star because he's like, well, I read that he wants to take over this position, which will run the red light district. So I'm sitting there listening to him going, so you wanted to be like a pimp? And he's like, so I figure he probably controls a lot of like drugs and substances, and so he probably uses them, so he's probably a bit of a burnout, so that's what I was going for. And I'm like, man, I like this guy really thinks his character through.
I don't know the research, but like I saw Evil Reese, I'm like, this has resonance, which sounds like, yes, I went to film school, and yes, they let me graduate, but like it was cool to see because Reese is usually a guy going like, aye, sir, being like, no, man, I'm gonna beat you up, oh, whoa. Like I was like, oh, it felt dope.
Yeah, like he saw his opening, and he was like, this is my opportunity to establish the character a little more, and he's in opposition to Owo, so she's got her thing going on, and there's all this tension in her because she's a security officer in the mirror universe. She's not a pilot. Man, it was exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Also, you notice that Detmer didn't have like her cyborg accoutrements in the mirror universe.
Right, because there was no
nothing at all.
War. Yeah, there was no Klingon war that affected the same way as Burning. So it's pretty cool. I wanted to add that on in post.
Because they have to. Do they shave part of her head, or is that like just like latex? I don't know.
They must.
Yeah,
they must though. I mean, that would be such a hard, plastic piece to put on week after week. I think most people would be like, just shave it.
Oh, yeah.
It'll grow back. I'm young.
It'll grow back. I know we're kind of low on time, but before we get into our haiku of the episode, just predictions of what you think is going to happen in part 2 of Terra Firma.
Ooh. Because we have this character of Carl, who we think is a Q, all kinds of questions are on the board here.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Leo?
Well, this is indeed like a sort of test for Georgiou, where she can, like, she's being her. Let's Q like being this because obviously, I mean, he's this guy who's sitting in the middle of nowhere, appears out of nowhere. He's got a table and a newspaper. First of all, people barely read newspapers today. I'm sure they would be like, they were like, what is that? What is that large piece of paper? It's not a book. It's so weird.
I do for the jumbo myself, but I know you're saying.
Yeah, really, we'd be like, oh, it was like, so I'm looking for the one ads. Anyway, so, and he makes this door appear. So if it is, I'm not sure she's actually going back in time. I think it is not an illusion, but I think it is a test. Mm-hmm. That's really conclusion as I was talking to you guys because I wasn't thinking. Didn't occur to me watching it. So I think it's a test. Depending on what she does depends on whether she'll be cured. Like I think if she shows some humanity, her wonky molecular structure will be adjusted so she can continue to live in the far distant future.
That sounds right to me. Yeah, because we do feel like she's probably going to be on the Section 31 spin-off series, right?
Yes, that's the speculation that she'll be part of it. Even though he's making the determination that she's going to go back.
Yeah, is she going to go back to
pre-Kirk times?
Yeah, are they going to send her back to our universe where she joins Section 31, or is there Section 31 in this Federation?
That's a good thing.
Yeah, we haven't had any indication that there is one, except maybe for the presence of Kovich, played, of course, by David Cronenberg.
Your boy!
My boy!
My boy David Cronenberg!
He's my favorite. I love his appearances because he's so, like, wonderfully unflappable, no matter what. He's like, Giorgio was like trying to be like, get her skin, and he's like, all right. And it just nothing bothers him. And he's like a therapist, Also, by the way, it occurs to me that the mirror universe is a universe where therapy never occurred. Like nobody came up with the idea of therapy. Like they were like, well, we're just going to work out our emotions by killing. And they're like, all right, like you want to talk about emotions? No. Stab.
That works for me, man. If I gotta pull a body in off my deck of my ship, you work on it. Yeah, you'll deal with it. But here's a question I have, because I was told there, Mr. Jenicek, that you write haiku, and I would and John, help me out here. What is going on with this? I want to hear one.
If you follow Leo on Facebook, and I don't know that Leo wants everyone to follow him on Facebook, but I think you should. Because
they can if they should. I also.
But every day he puts up. Yeah, I was so excited to see that because I didn't realize that was from your Twitter account. But yeah, he does
I have a couple of Twitter, but a D&D themed haiku every day, and I've been doing it for 5 years as of last month, which is insane. Because it sort of started. I've written this book Chosen, which I put up online for people to read, a chapter a week for about 9 months, and then I put up short stories. And when I had submitted the book to a publishing house, spoiler, they did not take it, but I was so anxious while I was waiting to hear. I couldn't write anything long because my mind was so so I wrote a bunch of D&D haikus and I threw them up. I'm like, hey, check out. And I got more likes for that than I got for my entire novel. And I was talking to a friend. I was like, what the F is that? I wrote a whole book. And it was and he's like, people don't have time, too long.
Snackable content, yeah.
So he said, well, why don't you do that? And I was like, yeah. So I started doing doing it daily, which is, forces me to write. But it's also some days I'm like, oh, what aspect I'm like, oh no, I've already made that sort of observation or joke. But I wrote. They were telling me because haiku came up in the episode recently, where they were doing haiku at that super awkward dinner that Saru was trying to get everybody hey, remember we all liked each other, we're friends, right? And then Detmer just loses her shit with everybody. So I wrote a haiku sort of. Which in the spirit of that scene, which is enjoy food with crew. I pilot this goddamn ship, so dessert that.
I don't know if you do I clap or snap at a haiku? Oh yeah.
I reach you, brother.
However you move. So
that's very nice, man.
Can
you do it one more time? Can you do it one more time?
Thank you. Absolutely. All right. Here we go. Enjoy food with crew. I pilot this goddamn ship. So, no dessert there?
I'll clap this time. That was nice.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh wow! You got the gift, my friend. You have the gift.
And I can tell folks at home from personal experience that if you respond to Leo's haiku with your own haiku, he will always honor you. He will always, give you a thumbs up. He'll always encourage. I always appreciate that.
Yeah,
Forget Reese.
It's always funny
because
sometimes I post them and post other haikus. I'm like, okay, I expect that. It's always like, cool, I've inspired somebody to do a haiku. Something I never thought I would ever say. But yeah, it. One of the nice things about doing it daily is, and just also with my blog, sounds very 90s, but it does force me, like I post something every, and like much, it's like a lot of the things I've written have been accident, because the first chapter of this arrondissement, which is the serialized story I started, which is this I describe as an absurdist Gallic themed urban fantasy, and I wrote this first piece, and I just went like crazy with description and just sort of weird, like somebody goes in a building that's just rising in the sky continually. You have to make sure you step on the right floor, otherwise you'll have to get in the stairs. But there's air spiders in the stairs, and that's a big problem. Sort of crazy, sort of descriptive. There's a cab driver, but his head is like a swarm of bugs, and that sort of, sort of fantastic thing. And I wrote it, and I was like, I just did it. I was like, it is an exercise more than anything else. And I had two friends who were like, so what happens now? Nothing. That was it. They're like, you should write some more. I'm like, okay. And I've been writing it for over a year now. I've got like 67 chapters.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm closing, like resolving this story. And it's very much seat of the pants writing. I didn't plot it out. Like even the novel, I had a super basic outline. Like, these characters go here and they go do this or that, and then they go here and they do that or that. This was like, okay. It started building, and I'm like, but it's been fun, and it's sort of this crazy world building.
Yeah, that's what I really admire about it. You've got your own sense of who and where and place and time, and it has its own fashion. It has its own ways of measuring things. I really love this world that you're making.
Like I think it was like the third installment, as a throwaway line at sort of, the cats. It was in the second one. It was like, the cats have unionized. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? I was like, I didn't know. I just it's like, it's like a little like absurdist comment, but it's come back to play a significant sort of element of the plot, that cats are like, and also you can never own a cat, and you're like, I don't have cats. No, that's true, because cats are like, we know who's in charge. So it's been a lot of fun writing it, and I hope people have enjoyed reading it. So, and it's, it's just this long, crazy, bizarre. It's like, I'm writing this, I'm like, if I had to, I'm not even sure how to describe it other than what I've said, because I didn't set out to do this, but it's sort of taken on a life of its own.
Fantastic.
At the risk of being like someone there's all chosen, which was a comedy fantasy book, and it's sort of going on the idea of like the big trope in fantasy is the chosen one, and we've seen it so many times. And I was like, if you're really a chosen one, and I think this in the very first chapters, is you run into two kinds of people who want to kill you, or people who want you to do something for them. The main character is the presumed chosen one of this like Nostradamus-esque sort of prophecy that everybody interprets in order to get him to do stuff for them, or they're trying to kill him. And he's fighting the main character's fighting this wizard, and he's like, I ask you, all you guys, all you dark wizards and evil overlords, he was like, you'll believe in the prophecy. They're like, well, absolutely. He says, well, if I'm supposed to be this prophesied hero, like, why are you fighting me? You already know how it's going to end. And he said, well, I never really thought about it that way. It is the sort of the silliness of, as much as I love fantasy, there is, like, all genre is like, it breaks down if you look at it closely. If you really take it apart, you just have to be like, does that make sense? It makes sense in this world, and you just go on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but it's a loving. I don't want to say parody because I don't like parodies. Because parody feels like you're just
Yeah, I wouldn't
mocking
call it
something. It's
Satire.
like it's sort of a huge. It's like it's sort of a nudge and a wink. It's like I love this too, but you know it's a little silly when you really think about it. But it doesn't make it any less enjoyable.
Right.
Sure, man. I can't wait to get on there and follow you and stalk you and all those
So that's
things. But I gotta say, Captain, it's
please
been
do.
a pleasure.
It's how I.
Yeah, it's
It
been
was
a pleasure hanging with you, Leo.
I enjoyed being your exchange officer for the week. So thank you for sending the doc.
No, for sure. And then also,
You got me.
You always come through with John Webber has like the best and most informative guests. Like always like sit there and be like, so how do you do the thing that you do? Tell me more. But it's about time we have to get out of here because it's our hour's up. But you know, if anyone wants to like check you out or stalk you online, how exactly would they do that?
Okay, you go to Jenicek.wordpress.com and go or look up the writings of Leo Jenicek, Jenicek. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's D_AND_D haiku because I wanted to make my handle as complicated as possible to remember or write down. But you can look up that's something I did that just really quickly, and I've sort of regretted not making it a little easier to write.
There's still time.
But if you can look up, much like my own last name, slightly complicated and easy to mispronounce. This was great. Thank you guys so much for having me. I had a blast.
Oh yeah.
I hope I
Thanks for
didn't
being
talk
on.
too much. I look forward to your thoughts on next week's episode, which I'm also very excited to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Both your episode and the actual episode.
sure. Thank you. You're going to watch both of them.
Thanks,
Awesome.
This is
My
a trick
Captain,
show, I think.
I know.
Yes.
Sorry to cut you off there. I was going to say, my Captain, I'll be here in a week's time with you. I wonder if we can follow you online and stalk you and become a fan of your things. How do we do that?
I am on Instagram as Hello John Webber. I'm very active right now on my Twitter at Hello John Webber. So come on by there because I'm going to be going over to Leo's Twitter and finding those haikus, and I'm going to be sharing some of them. So you won't have to search his difficult name. You could just click it off my page.
Yeah, hello, John Webber. And of course, it's me, Flobo Boyce. You can follow me at flobito.com. Hey, this time of the year, there's two ways you can support the homie. One, buy a t-shirt or a mask or a mug over at flobito.threadless.com. Or if you want to see bonus content, exclusive interviews, more cool creative stuff, I do some poetry too, but I'm not nearly as good as Mr. Jenicek. Check it out at patreon.com/FloboBoys. Be a member of the Mister's crew.
Peace off.
Hey, I gotta put you over, brother. You're the guest. But you're the deal. Until next time, John Webber said the words.
Live long and prosper, my friends.